$175,000 for a new car. And on top of that, they want to just replace gasoline pumps with hydrogen pumps and sell you the fuel again.
All right. Let's get back to refuting this. In other words, no matter how it works, Bob, and it sounds like you're almost more on the negative than the positive side of this, but I mean, no matter how it works, aren't conventional fuels going to have to be used in copious amounts to produce these cylinders of hydrogen? No, I don't.
How do you figure? The system that I came up with, first of all, converts a conventional car to burn hydrogen conventionally.
And no fuel with how much cost?
Well, let me get to that in a second.
Right.
The actual conversion is not that difficult, not that terribly expensive. I have not used any energy producing any of the hydrogen that I make as far as power off the grid, fossil fuels, or whatnot. Hydrogen is easily electrolyzed by water. You know, if you need to prove it to yourself, take a 12-volt battery, put both wires in the water, add a pinch of salt, and you'll see bubbles coming off of one side. Well, some off the other, too.
That ought to be hydrogen.
Right. Anyway, it's easily produced, and it can be produced with solar panels or a wind turbine. I use solar panels. That's where all my hydrogen comes from. I fill up the Corvette with it, and we drive 700 miles on it. And the car will also run on gasoline.
All right. So that's perfected. I mean, it works, right?
Right, and it's worked for years and years and years.
All right, let's say I buy a conventional automobile for, I don't know, 20, 30 grand, something like that. What would it cost to convert a car like that to hydrogen?
Well, the big hang-up right now has been the actual storage medium. You don't want to store hydrogen as just a compressed gas because it's dangerous, it's flammable, and on top of that, you need thousands of times more space to hold the hydrogen than you would an equivalent amount of gasoline.
Okay.
So it just doesn't work.
Right.
You don't want to store it liquid because that's cryogenic. It's dangerous. It's just a big thermos bottle in your tank, and it's another big headache. The third way is the best way, and that's a metal hydride. And this is the granular material that absorbs hydrogen like a sponge absorbs water.
Mm-hmm.
And it only releases the hydrogen when it's heated, and when it's not being heated, I can fire incendiary bullets through the hydride tank, and it just smolders like a cigarette. So it's extremely safe.
Wow.
And this is the material that I store the hydrogen in the vehicles and for home use.
Is this the subject of a patent?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah. Now, there are various hydride materials, and some were actually very difficult to get a hold of because some of them, like lithium-6 deuteride, which is a hydride, actually, well, the material I use is a hydride. The only use for that material is in thermonuclear bombs, and it's restricted, obviously restricted for sale.
Yeah.
And the only reason some of these hydrides are manufactured was for the weapons industry, and they're done so in such small quantities, the cost was very high. For instance, to convert the Corvette just for the tanks of hydride, we were looking at $15,000 without the hydrogen conversion itself. So this is, you know, that's a pretty large price tag.
Out of line right now.
Right.
But if this whole thing were perfected and you had access to the materials and it were done in mass, I'd like to get some idea of what it would cost to convert.
Well, we've been working with the hydride manufacturers, and they promise a 70% reduction in cost in volume production. So
does that make it viable?
Very much so. I mean, wouldn't you pay between $4,500 and $6,000 to have your car converted? You'll have your hydrogen generator at home, so you can drive locally and even up to 700 miles away on hydrogen. And if you want, you can always put gas in the tank, and the car will switch over to gasoline when necessary.
Okay, I've always wanted to know, would I need to do that? Would hydrogen give me the same equal amount of horsepower? Would I be happy with a hydrogen fuel?
You get a little less, you know, for instance, in a larger engine. In fact, that's the reason we converted the Corvette. was a lot of these alternate fuel cars, you see little Ford Escorts and these little tiny motors, and it leaves everybody wondering, well, can't you power something substantial?
Mm-hmm.
So we purposely did a large V8 engine, and it still lights up the tires and, screams away. There's a little loss in horsepower, but in a large engine, you're not going to detect a 10% loss in horsepower.
But you're still having a lot of fun, though. I mean, it's enough horsepower that generally most people are going to be happy campers.
Oh, sure, and most people are willing to pay that price tag if they never, ever have to go to a gas station again. And who wouldn't? On top of that, you're not supporting, the oil cartel.
That's right.
Or anything else that's going on or polluting the air.
And by the way, it's probably going to screw up my little scenario, pleading for some more Bob Lazars to come forward. But out of curiosity, Bob, tonight all across the world, people who have been involved up at Area 51, S4, have seen what you have seen. These people, they're probably listening, Bob. A lot of them are listening. You can be sure of it, actually. And so what would you say to these people? Would you say, you know what, Art's right. Why don't you go ahead and email them, and why don't you come on and tell what you know? Would you advise them to do that?
No.
No, I knew you'd screw it up.
Don't tell anybody what you know. Just take my word for it.
I knew you'd do that. I knew it.
Yeah, well, that really is my message. Just forget it.
Forget it, huh?
Yeah, just forget it. Don't bother saying anything. It's not worth the hassle.
It's not worth it.
It's not. And for the most part, nobody's going to believe what you have to say anyway, so don't even think of doing it.
Well, thanks for the help.
I'm sorry, but you asked.
Yeah, and I knew, I guess, what I was in for. Okay, well, I know, but still, all right, but let me take the other side of it, Bob. Let's fight this a little bit. There's a lot of people out there, like Stephen Greer, who I'll have on tomorrow night, and they really do make a compelling, damn strong case that, gosh, darn it all, if we've been visited by aliens, if they've really been here, if we have their craft, their technology, and even bodies, and this is such an incredibly large story, so important to the human race, that nobody has a right to keep anything like this secret, and it should be told, it should be out in the open, and if these Bob Lazars don't come in and talk to me and others, then how in the hell are we ever going to find out? Because you said it yourself, the government sure isn't going to tell us.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely.
Well, then how can you say that?
Well, from personal experience.
Yeah, in other words, you're not really a crusader at all, are you?
No.
You're not?
No. I'm not involved in UFO research. I don't follow the stories. I don't do lectures. I don't...
I know you don't.
I don't do any of that stuff. I try and put it behind me, and a lot of people really... have the drive to get this stuff uncovered, but generally those are the people that haven't been involved with anything. And, sticking your neck out on the line really does change your life forever, and it's not a positive thing. People really get the wrong impression. They think that, this is a big boost in some way to you, and it's not by any stretch of the imagination. So why would I recommend somebody do that?
Well, a lot of people, Bob, think that, when they have these reality TV shows and people line up for blocks and wait 2 days through the ice and the cold to get a chance to be, have FaceTime on television. We do live in that kind of world, and so some people suspect your motive is that. But
but I hate being on TV. I hate doing interviews, and I don't do lectures and all that. How could that possibly be my motivation?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I believe me, I do understand. Do you have any knowledge? Diane up in Washington wants to know. I get a computer message every now and then, a lot of them actually. Do you have any knowledge, it's a good question, of any agreement between any group of aliens and humans or the U.S. government? Do you believe that to be true or know it to be true, that there is some understanding?
I've heard rumors of that from various sources, but I don't have any first-hand knowledge of an actual agreement that was cut between anybody.
There's a lot of speculation, of course, about an agreement to allow some human beings, for example, to be abducted, for research in return for let's say, technology, and John Lear alluded to all that and said that they, in essence, reneged on that aspect of what was supposed to be a deal. Of course, to make, you'd never make that kind of thing public. If you had made a deal to shuffle off some of your citizens at random to guys who are going to do God knows what to them, chop them up, cut them up, whatever they do, you couldn't ever talk about that ever.
I don't know. I find that kind of hard to believe.
So then John has gone too far for you. Is that right?
I'm sure he's listening.
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening.
That John knows he's gone too far for me. John's convinced that there are people living on, or some sort of beings living on Venus and some other local planets.
That's right.
And that drives me crazy.
Does it?
It absolutely does. And a bunch of the things he says.
Well, he's convinced there are artifacts on the moon, gigantic artifacts on the moon and Mars. And others have said that as well. Richard C. Hoagland and others have said there are things on the moon. In fact, you know what? There's a speculation that the President of the United States, Mr. George Bush, is about to make a speech in which he's going to say the United States is going to go back to the moon. There's going to be a shuttle mission to go back to the moon.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard he's supposed to make some sort of announcement.
And we would do it presumably with a shuttle, which is
really?
Yeah, really interesting.
How are you going to get the shuttle?
Don't ask me. I have no idea, but that's what I'm hearing. And actually, I've heard Mr. Hoagland say it's possible. I mean, if they used in other words, once, I think Richard has said, or someone said, once you get into orbit, you're halfway to anywhere.
Well, sure, but if you want to actually get on the moon, it's a different story. The orbiter wasn't designed to do that at all, and in fact, it needs to be replaced with something else.
Yeah, it's getting pretty old.
Yeah.
Still, that's apparently what's going to be announced. I could turn out to be wrong, but I don't know of any other spacecraft that we have in current production that would get us to the moon. Do you?
No, but we do still have a Saturn V sitting there.
A Saturn V could do it.
Well, it was designed to do it with the lunar module and everything. It's sitting there in Florida. Just dust the thing off and launch it because they stopped the program right. You
think it'd be all right? Not like old ammunition? I mean, it's pretty old now.
Well, it's for the most part, it's metal and components. Just sit there with something that works. Mm-hmm. Don't do what the United States typically does and reinvent the wheel constantly. Mm. That got us to the moon many times. It worked. Just update it with some modern materials, electronics, and components, and use it since it's there. And stop spending huge amounts of money doing nothing.
What can you imagine our motivation would be for going back to the moon? I mean, we did go, most people believe, actually I don't think we even went, but I believe we went, and we got rocks, and we didn't get very many surprises, and so what could we do on the moon today that we didn't do then? That
always seemed more sensible to me to make a small moon base as opposed to a space station.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, for various reasons. First of all, the space station is limited in what it can do. I know a moon base is much more difficult to get to. It doesn't have to be large, but you can at least try and test out some technology on trying to manufacture fuel, do some small refining, see what you can get from the surrounding environment. There have been reports, I think, was it the Cassini? Some radar mapping craft over the past 4 or 5 years detected that there were supposedly large frozen areas of water.
That's correct,
on the moon.
Right.
However, they just went over that data again. And had another arbiter now are refuting some of that. So, if you've got water, you've got energy, and you've got the possibility for all kinds of stuff. But
so we're back to a foggy area. There may not be enough water there to manufacture fuel, which would be a necessity.
Right.
So. Right. That would make it uninhabitable if they're completely reversing themselves now. It's kind of strange to me. A lot of people believe, Bob, that there are things on the moon, large glass structures, incredible things that were hidden from the world when we went to the moon, and have been hidden ever since, and that's the reason they say we haven't gone back. I believe John is one of the people who believes that.
Yeah, he is. I'm not one of the people that believes that.
You are not?
No. No, absolutely not.
Then why go back, Bob?